Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Brandon Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I am thrilled and honored to have Tim Wackel with me today, one of today's most popular business speakers who has mastered the ability to make more information more entertaining, memorable, easy to understand. This guy combines 20 years of successful sales execution and leadership experience working with some of the largest enterprise companies in the world. And Tim was number one producer in a 10,000 person sales organization in Silicon Valley startup, all the way through successful IPO, directing a $50 million sales organization for a Fortune 500 company. Mr. Tim Wackel, happy afternoon. Thanks for joining us today.
Very, very kind of you. I appreciate a warm introduction. My mom would be proud. Those are her words, and you just rocked them.
Oh, man. Well, we're honored, humbled, and grateful to have you here with us today. This is a sales expert that sold for HP, Agilent Technologies, docent for many years, launched his own sales expert consulting, training, speaking, presentation company in 2001. And Tim, I'm just really excited. You know, I know that the audience is dying to learn what is your top sales secret. You know, if you were to go back 20 years from now, 5 years from now, when you first started in sales, whatever it may be, what that is. But before we do that, you know, take us back to who you are, where you're from, and how did you even get started in sales and the successes and failures along the way?
So I'm a traditional accidental salesperson, Brandon. When I got out of school, I actually got out of school with an electrical engineering degree. And so I was doing engineering work for HP. And, you know, one day I got pulled aside and they said, hey, we really like to put you into a technical sales role. And I was not interested. It's like, you know, I'm an engineer. I don't like talking to people. And I didn't want to call mom back on the farm and say, guess what? Your son's now a sales guy. I mean, it just seemed, you know, sleazy, you know, beneath me. And, you know, I tell the story, Brandon, that, you know, they told me, hey, think it over for a couple of days. Because we really think you'd do well. Think it over and come back. And, you know, so I went home and tried to process that decision with my wife. And, you know, when I looked at the salespeople I knew, I was 24, 25 years old at the time. I looked at salespeople I knew, and, you know, I kind of came to three conclusions. Most salespeople I knew showed up late most every day. I mean, these guys weren't busting the door down at 8. Most of the salespeople I knew left work early. I mean, my sales buddies would call and say, hey, you know, you want to get together and have a beer after work? And I'd be, man, that sounds great. What time you guys getting together? 3:45. And I'm like, 3:45?
Like,
what kind of deal is that?
Yeah.
And then the third conclusion I came to is most of the salespeople I knew at that age played a lot of golf. I mean, it was like every week they were out on the golf course doing some sort of customer outing or customer golf. And so long story short, I thought to myself, you know what, if I can show up late, go home early, and play golf a lot, I think this sales job is for me. So I went back and told them I'm all in. And the way the story goes is that first year of selling for HP, I showed up late more often than not. I went home early almost every day, and I played a ton of golf. And I ask clients all the time, how much do you think I sold that first year? And most people are like, man, you probably didn't sell much. I mean, come on. Right. I said, actually, you're wrong. I sold a ton my first year. I sold my motorcycle. I sold my skis. I sold my stereo. You know, when your kids get skinny, you figure it out, right? So that's my story. That's how I got into sales.
Oh, wow. And what did your parents do? So you said, oh, man, you know, they were worried about you going into sales. What were they doing?
So I grew up in a very, very small rural town in Nebraska. And, you know, my dad was kind of a part-time banker, part-time rancher. And so, you know, I kind of came from the farm. And so to go become an engineer was like, oh, my son's an engineer. And I think mom took pride in that. I didn't think mom wanted to go to the church luncheon and now announce that I was in sales. But, you know, it all worked out for the best. It worked out for the best.
Yeah. And back then it was, you know, it was looked kind of down upon, right? Like,
yeah.
Like kind
Yeah,
of like
it wasn't an honorable
sleazy.
profession. I mean, we've come a long ways. We've still got knuckleheads out there that make it difficult for guys like you and I. But that's over 30 years ago, and back then it was not the honorable profession it is today.
Yeah, and I know you guys like you and other experts in the space have done a great job of. I believe that sales is the greatest profession in the world, and it's the number one highest earning profession in the world. I would challenge that over doctors, lawyers, and colleges, schools. No one teaches this stuff. Like sales is the greatest thing next to entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is just too hard and too risky. So sales is number one.
Yeah.
No, that's incredible. So you tell your wife, "Hey, I'm going into sales." You take the job. Was it hard for you to get the job at HP, like being an engineer, or did they love that you were an engineer?
Getting the original engineering job at HP was very difficult. So at that point in time, Brandon, HP was was known for really having very difficult, stressful college interviews. So I was real tickled just to get the engineering job with HP, and then when that morphed into the sales. That's when I really started learning stuff because HP had a very, very good onboarding process. I mean, we spent 3 months on the road visiting all the different manufacturing divisions. So I got to travel all over. And I was with a group of other folks that kind of came into that. It was kind of like they called it a neophyte class. And so a wonderful onboarding program. You really got to understand the products, the services, and the people who built them, the people that were going to be supporting you. So it was I was really set up for success early on. It was still difficult for me because I think for that first year, I'd meet people and they'd say, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And I would kind of make stuff up. I would just avoid saying I was a sales rep. So it's like, well, I'm a technical customer or advocate for HP. I mean, it took me a while to get my head around it. But once you get your head around it, that's step one. You got to get your mind right. And once I got my mind right, things started to fall in place.
Wow, that's amazing. And then, so you were there for a long time, right? Like
Yeah.
HP was the behemoth. You were there, I think, from 83 to around 94, 98, right? Almost
Yeah, I was actually with HP from 83 to 99. So almost 17 years.
That's incredible.
It was a good run. Yeah.
That's a hell of a run. And that was when HP was like blowing up, going crazy, like fastest growing, right? Or no?
Yeah, it was. Through just stupid luck, my tenure there was probably. I've just got a lot of great memories. It was a ton of fun. People to this day that I still stay in touch with. I mean, we actually had a reunion of everybody who started kind of at the same time I did in the same office, and people flew in from all over. So it was, HP's gone through some ups and downs since then. That's yesterday's news. But no, I was there. At a really great time to come through the HP culture.
Now is that the one? Because I know you talk a lot about being the number one producer in a 10,000 person sales organization. Now, was that at HP or was that at another company?
No, that was at HP. HP actually had a very elite.
Can we talk about they had this? Number one out of 10,000?
Well,
my man.
That's back when the Salesforce at HP was huge. And I had just a stupid, crazy, successful year. All the pieces fell together. I was in the right place at the right time. And I worked hard. I wasn't always the best at what I did, but nobody would outwork me, and all the pieces fell into place. And it was just, it was a marvelous memory. It was really, and that led to me actually having the opportunity to actually spend time with Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. So one of my favorite photos in my office is this picture of me and Bill and Dave, and we all have tuxedos on. I'm the only guy that had to run a tuxedo for that party, but it made a big impression on me and certainly helped my career.
Wow! So tell me a little bit about that, like the successes and failures. Let's talk about the failures you probably learned the most from. But how did you, at that time, this high tech company it's skyrocketing. There's 10,000 salespeople, right in Silicon Valley, one of the hottest startups in the world. And what did you do? What was like the daily trends, the daily habits that you did every day while you were there? Like, how did you get to number one there?
It's a lot of this is going to be yesterday's news, because I'm a real big believer in, we all know what we need to do to be successful. We just have to be disciplined in doing it. So, at that particular time, my responsibility was just new business only. So I was a hunter. Anybody that ever done business with us, awesome. They took everybody off the account list that had ever done business with us, and I got to knock on doors, pick up the phone, send emails, and so. You had to just be real purposeful about what you were doing. And this is stuff that you guys are so great at, but, nobody ever defaults to prospecting mode, right? You don't sit around Friday at 4:30 and go, hey, I'm going to make some calls. So, I had to put a process around it, which was good for my engineering brain, put a process around it. Hey, if I've got to have this, if I know I need to close this much in a month, how many conversations am I going to have? And that leads to, how many calls am I going to have to make? How many proposals? And so, mathematically, it made a lot of sense to me. And I knew from the math that, if I miss today, then I got to do double tomorrow. And that never sounded attractive. So it's like, hey, each and every day, you just got to get up and you got to execute. You got to do what you need to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I totally forgot. Was it hard for you to transition from being an engineer to going into sales? Like, because to me, they're like, sales is very engineering. Like you just said, the metrics, like if this, then that. Sales is very much an if this, then that type of statement. Like, was it hard or pretty easy?
There were parts that were hard and parts that were easy. So the parts that were easy were the metrics and the math behind it. That felt really good. Plus, I kind of approached my sales role as being a problem solver. So I was really never out to sell anybody something. I mean, I wanted that to happen, but I approached it more that, hey, listen, I as an engineer, I'm going to help you, an engineer, make the right decision. Let's look at this problem. Let's analyze the problem. And you know what? If my solution's the best, I'd sure love to have your business. And if my solution isn't the best, I'll shake your hand and I'll live to fight another day. So those things were easy. The things that were hard is, I think, my mindset early on was, when I showed up because I was there to educate my customers, right? They needed to understand this technology. They needed to understand these measurements. They needed to understand the market. And it was really hard for me to let go of that. I don't think people like to be educated. I know they don't. I mean, people today spend a lot more money to be entertained than to be educated. And when I finally kind of let down my, hey, I'm here as an engineer to help. When I let that down and just kind of became real, people liked me better, and I was more comfortable because I kind of like having fun. And when I learned how to have fun, things really turned around for me.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, you said the daily habits, you had to do the daily work, the daily habits to become number one. Do you remember specific things that you were doing daily at HP? Again, this is like a remarkable situation. Number one producer in a 10,000 person company, the fastest growing startup in Silicon Valley at the time. What were some of those daily habits?
I think the things that I tried to focus on was, making the calls I knew I needed to make, right? So trying to get indoors that I'd never been in before. I had to do that each and every day. You had to work the existing pipeline each and every day. I mean, you didn't touch everybody in the pipeline every day, but, I tried to make sure that every third Monday wasn't, the day that you had to follow up with everybody. So, whatever was in the pipeline, you knew you had certain milestones, certain mile markers you had to make. So it's like, okay, part of the day had to be managing the pipeline and kind of pushing things forward. Part of the day would always be, the reports that salespeople still have to do and have always done, making sure my reports were there, my reports were done on time. And then part of the day would be spent, preparing for the rest of the week. Back then, Brandon, a lot of what we did, we had to demo. So we had to actually go out and make presentations in order to close the business. And
like live in person.
Yeah, live in person. And
it's so weird now because like most of the deal, almost 98% of the deals we do here at like seamless.ai, the world's best sales, it's all virtual. Like 6-7 deals, all virtual.
No, we would have to load stuff up in a van and drive to the customer site.
Wow.
It's crazy because it could take you an hour and a half or 2 hours to set up for a demo, and then people show up and virtual is difficult, and live can be much more difficult because people are sitting right there, and you'd be talking about something and somebody reach over and push a button and be like, oh no, tell me you didn't push the red button. And so things could get sideways. And so you had to spend time really thinking about your demos and, making sure that you didn't show them every feature, right? Only showing the features that they would find value in, and make sure that you weren't talking about features, but talking about the benefit of the features. And you always had to prepare for that, that numbskull that you knew was going to reach up and touch a button you didn't want him to touch. So you always had to have a, kind of a contingency plan if things got sideways.
Yeah, fallback plan, a backup plan.
Yep.
That's funny. You're like, don't touch it, please. I'm praying, don't touch that one button that the demo just goes to shot. That's
well,
funny.
and there's people out there that the more you tell them don't do it, they want to do it. So it was full-time work for me.
Yeah, and what do you think your biggest? Let's go failure to success, because I always feel like you learn the most from your failures. What was the biggest failure or learning experience that you had? Selling for HP over this nearly 20-year, success span? Like, what was the biggest thing? I've got a lot of failures in my life, unfortunately. Fortunately, I've had a lot of failures. And, it's always great for the audience, our sales audience, to learn from experts like yourself. What was your biggest learning experience there?
I would say I really had to learn to, kind of be humble. Kind of swallow pride. And what I mean by that is I had to learn to pitch less and probe more. I guess it might be me, it might be others, but I would prepare so long and so hard that when I walked into that meeting, I just assumed I was the smartest guy in the room. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but that was a really, really, really poor attitude that did not serve me well. And it took a while, but once I learned that, hey, you may think you know this inside out, but they don't know that you know it inside out. And when you show up and you tell people, I understand you, I don't think that gets you much traction. But when you show up and you go through a well-planned, thoughtful diagnostic conversation, that to me was a big learning experience. I always thought for years that we show people how brilliant we are through what we say. That's not true. You show people how brilliant you are through the questions that you ask.
Yeah, I agree that sales discovery, right?
Yep.
What on average, what's the typical, and by the way, congrats on kind of noticing that the necessity to become humble, to be more curious, and to execute that critically important sales discovery. Once you did that, how fast did things improve?
Very quickly. I mean, I'm not going to say it was an overnight. It was an overnight sensation because it took me a long time. It was probably it probably took longer for me to flip the switch than it did for the results to flip the switch. I just didn't wake up on Wednesday and say, okay, you used a great word. I didn't wake up on Wednesday and say, I'm going to be more curious. It was an iterative process that probably took months for me to really get my head around, to get my behavior around, get my habits around. But I remember going in, and again, we'll go back to the demo. A lot of demos used to be like, "Hey, let me show you everything. We'll push every button. We'll talk about every screen,
every feature."
And it would almost put me to sleep. So it had to be putting the customer to sleep. So I went from that to showing up and saying, "Okay, Brandon. So my understanding is, if I can show you how this product will do this, you'd be willing to move forward with us in a contract. Is that your understanding?" You'd say, "Yeah." I would demonstrate that. You'd say, "Gee, Tim, that's exactly what I wanted to see it do." Done. And, meetings became shorter. Meetings became more productive. And I wasn't the guy that was like, he was here for an hour and a half last week. We don't want to invite him back. I was the guy that, hey, he was here for 20 minutes. He answered our questions. Let's invite him back. So that was, we all learn. Like you said, that it's really through the failures that you learn the most.
Yeah. It's funny. We've got our discovery down. We could do demo in less than 10 to 20 minutes. And we have 7 critically important discovery questions that we have to ask. And, it used to be an hour and a half and then an hour. And we're just so obsessed with like maximum value in shortest amount of time possible. How do we do that?
Yeah.
We'll close deals now without even demoing,
that's great.
You just having a conversation. Okay. So that was the biggest learning experience. And then what was the biggest success, that you had at HP, and what do you think drove that success? And then we're going to get into your consulting company, because that's how I came across you like a decade ago. And I'm going to brag a lot about your stuff that you work on because it positively impacted me and our company. But what was your biggest success at HP?
I had one particular deal that multiple salespeople had tried to close before, and every time we closed it kind of became undone, and was actually a deal with state government. So that adds kind of a third dimension of weirdness to it.
Yep.
And
typically time.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. And when I got called in, so, they went to the bullpen and it was like, okay, Wackel, we're bringing you in. I came in, and the customer was very upset. The customer was threatening litigation. The customer wouldn't even let me on the property, had me stopped at the gate by a guard. So it's like, man, I'm in a canoe with a noodle for a paddle. This is not gonna move very fast. And it took a long time, and it took a lot of work, and it took a lot of calm heads. But we were able to get the customer off the ledge and successfully closed. It ended up being a very, very critical deal for us at the time, and a very, very critical deal for one of our manufacturing divisions over in Scotland. And, it ended up being a big success. So it went from, on the edge of litigation to this guy was now one of our biggest evangelists. And, I still look back at that and I smile, because we went through a lot of ups and downs, but we got it where it needed to be.
How did you keep your cool, your high emotional intelligence through that whole process? Like with the litigation, did you just want to run away and just shut the deal down? Like, hey, we're done, I'm moving on to better deals. Like, how did you stay in that deal?
I did want to run away, but unfortunately the deal had so much exposure that if I ran away, everybody and their mother was going to see me running away. And so I didn't have a choice. And quite frankly, Brandon, the customer we were dealing with, was so irrational. I mean, some of the stuff that would be said was so completely off the charts that you were able to sit there and you'd be like, there's just no way that's going to happen. And so there was I don't know if I had emotional intelligence as much as a lot of the threats that were happening. It was like, dude, that's just not reasonable. We could bring 12 people in off the street and they would listen to you and they'd go, what I'm going to call BS here. So it had gotten that extreme. And so I just kind of sat there and listened some more. And, we finally got it done.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, okay. We talked a lot about HP, where you were number one in a 10,000 person sales organization, which is incredible. Again, like you probably could have written 10 books on that whole experience, but hopefully we got the top failure, the top, sales success, which is great. So then you go on to Agilent Technologies for a short stint. You go on to Docent to be the director of sales. And then you launch your own sales consulting company, where you're a sales trainer, speaker, presentation coach. And that's where I came across you, because I remember being like new to enterprise B2B sales. And I came across your online courses because you were one of the only guys that sold like online courses that I could like maybe one day afford. That wasn't like 50,000. You had like the consumer courses.
Yeah.
And it was like $150 or something. And I'm like, man, I was like, I can't even afford that. And then you would give away a free course every now and then. And then you would give a coupon code to get the free course. And I just remember Googling all over the place, like 10 years ago, like for the different Tim Wackel coupon codes, because your training and your courses, I would listen to it and I would transcribe it and write down every single word because the scripts were fire. Like your content is amazing. And, I'm just really excited to learn more about, your experience running, Tim Wackel, your consulting company, and what you've learned along the way. And then that will open up the biggest question that the audience is dying to learn, which is what's your top sales secret? But tell us a little bit about your experience running your firm and, what you've learned with all the clients that you consult for sales.
So that's a great question, Brandon. When I walked away from corporate America, I did not have another opportunity. I had just gotten to a point in my career where I just kind of needed a timeout. So I took a timeout, And they always say the best way to find a job is to, always make sure you have a job when you're looking for a job. Well, I disregarded that because I literally walked off the field in the middle of the fourth quarter and went and sat on the bench because I was just, physically, emotionally, mentally whipped. We'd had a couple of tough years doing things in different organizations, and I just took some time off. So long story short, after I don't know, a couple months on the sideline, one day I got a little pep talk from my wife because she's like, hey, baby, I love you, but I'd love you to get out of the house. You got to go find something to do.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you crush it at HP, super successful career, and then you join these two other tech companies, and there's some challenges. You kind of get burnt out. How was it? How did you get the motivation, or how did you bounce back from this experience of being on a really high and then going like really low, right? Because you said like you went through a really tough time, and then that's when your wife was like, dude, Tim, you got to get back in the game, man. And I've had that. My fiance has done that for me. She's an angel from above. She's done that to me with like multiple companies I run, multiple sales jobs that I've had, because sales and entrepreneurship is like ups and lows.
Yeah.
So how did you tell me about, like, walk us through how you bounced back, like the low that you went through, and then how you got unstuck in sales? Because I think a lot of salespeople, right, we all deal with being stuck, and it's so hard to get remotivated, re-energized.
Well, like I said, I'm spending some time at home, and that gets old, and it really got old for my better half. And during this time, Brandon, I was actually still going out and looking for jobs. So I was flying all over the country, interviewing for sales leadership roles. And, I'd come back and, my wife would be waiting for me, and we'd have a glass of wine, and she'd be like, well, what'd you think? And there was this common thread after I came back from every interview. And it's like, these people, they're clueless. They don't have their poop in a group. And it's just broken, brother. It's just broken.
Like their sales processes and sales technology, or what?
All of it, the way they hire people, the way they train people, the pipeline forecasting, metrics. I mean, everybody was just running around willy nilly. And it was like, look, I just got done putting out a 3-alarm fire. I don't want to go do that again. And then, one night my wife kind of, in a very pithy voice just said, well, look, if everybody's that broken, then why can't you make money trying to fix it? And it was like, well, that's a heck of an idea. So the next day we had lunch in a little shopping center about 3 blocks from the house. And I never noticed, I'm in an old part of Dallas, and I never noticed before because it's all retail. But above the retail stores, there were offices that I'd never seen before. And all of a sudden it was like this epiphany. It's like, there's some office space. I'm going to go rent an office. So my first office was maybe 10 feet by 8 feet. I had a phone, a card table, a folding chair, and a laptop.
Folding chair, man.
Dude, it was sad because I was like, I'm going to be a good financial steward. If I'm going to try to do this on my own, I'm not going to get crazy. So, but I did rent some office space, and the first day, Brandon, I sat there and I kept on picking up the phone and just making sure it had dial tone. And it's like, well, nobody's calling me, so I'm going to have to make something happen. So, long story shorter is I told my wife, I said, look, I'm going to put together a campaign of 100 no's. I'm going to come up with 100 people that I'm going to approach. And if I get to 100 no's and this thing isn't cash flow positive, I will tuck my tail, I will swallow my pride, and I will go back to working for the man, and I'll go clean it up someplace else. And I don't know, I was maybe 30 calls, 40 calls in, and I was talking to a friend who at that point in time was at Red Hat. And he said, man, I cannot believe, he's like, I can't believe you're on the sideline. We had a sales kickoff coming up. What if you would come in and do a couple hours? And I was like, I'd love to do it. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I said, I'd love to do it because, you're just looking for opportunities to do some cash. And so that was my first client was Red Hat. And they were
a little tech company, right? I mean, Red Hat's massive, man. Congrats.
Well, and they were very kind to me. So we did so here's the story behind the story, Brandon. I mean, my proposal to them was like, okay, this is going to be, $6,213.57. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. And I went and did the program. It took me, I had 2 months, and I think I worked 60 hours a week trying to figure out what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Interviewing their people, interviewing their leadership. I put together this program, went to Raleigh-Durham, and I remember 2 hours in, we took our first break, and I just remember going to the restroom and saying to myself, OMG, if people will pay me to do this, I am so in. And
That's awesome.
The program went really well. After the program, VP of Sales took me aside with, I think they called it their Chief People Officer, which was like their HR person in charge of training. And the three of us sat in a conference room, and the VP said to me, he said, man, that was really good, and we need to do that 6 more times across the U.S. And he said, I'll let you and the Chief People Officer figure out the details. And so I thought, man, 1 turns into 7. And so the Chief People Officer said, Tim, that was just, that was really outstanding. You just did a great job. You delivered exactly what we needed and then some. He says, I've only got one problem before we move forward. And I said, what's that? And he says, your price. I thought, man, here we go. I go, well, tell me more. He says, you're not charging enough. And I was like, yeah, it was like an angel from heaven, to your point. And so that was the beginning. Red Hat was really kind of the springboard that got me going where I needed to be.
Dude, incredible. And I feel like the sales kickoffs, oh man, so much prep, like, because you've only got a certain amount of time to just make it as impactful as possible to motivate and inspire, empower, and then activate. Like, so you probably took the whole 2 months to prepare for that?
Oh, it was crazy, dude. I mean, I tell the story, when I left corporate, this is going to really date myself, but it's no surprise. I've been doing this for a while. I had an executive assistant, Brandon. I never, ever put together a slide. I sketched ideas on a piece of paper and gave it to somebody, and my, things appeared. And, so my office is close to Southern Methodist University, SMU. So I had to go over to the student union and post a job. Hey, I need somebody to, do PowerPoint for me. I had no idea how to lay out a workbook. I had to find somebody to lay out the workbooks. I had to find a printer to print the workbooks. I mean, it was like giving birth for me. It was, but once you do it once, it's like, okay, you start, you figure it. Yeah. I was learning a whole new process, a whole new life.
Dude, that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
And then you started to take all this content that you created and took it online.
Yeah.
I know you go into big enterprise organizations, you consult them, but I love those courses, man. I love being able to buy and watch those courses at any time on demand. Like, I wish more people did a lot of those. I don't see a lot of it, but they positively impacted me. And then from the beginning till where you're at now. So what have been some of the biggest contributors to growing your practice? And then, we'll open it up directly into the sales secret. What's your sales secret from, your deepest, darkest sales secret that maximized your growth, your revenue, your sales success?
So, I think the secret to the growth or any success I've had here, Brandon, I mean, it's one part hard work. People that approach me and go, hey, I'd love to do exactly what you do. And I think I have the best job on the planet, bar none, because number one, I get to sell every day. But then number two, so I'm a practitioner, right? It's not like, hey, I read a book on selling and I'm going to teach you. I still eat what I kill. So I still love that part of the job. Day. Oh yeah, dude. I love that. And what's great about my job is then I have to go out and teach salespeople. So there's a huge amount of accountability, right? So if I show up at your organization tomorrow and I'm like, man, you guys got to hit the phones, you got to be targeting, you got to be prospecting. And if I haven't been doing that, it really causes some internal pressures inside me. So it's like being, if you wanted to be fit and you were a yoga instructor, that's a great synergy, right? It's like, okay, I want to be a great salesperson, and you have to be a great salesperson if you're going to teach other great salespeople how to get better. So I think it's hard work. And to your point, when it's good, it's great. And when it's bad, it's awful. And you just got to understand that's the ride we've chosen. We are on the roller coaster. We're not on the merry-go-round. We are on the roller coaster. So there's going to be highs and lows. There's some just stupid luck being in the right place at the right time. I've just been doing this for a long time.
And I interrupted you. So you said that the sales secret was hard work, and then you were about to get into probably the second half of that, like, or you were combining a few things.
I think I'm just kind of riffing on you here. Just kind of, I wouldn't say that's my sales secret as much as that's probably been the secret to the success of this organization, of this firm.
Yep.
Is just, the hard work, understanding there's going to be highs and lows, some dumb luck, being committed to a process, and then making sure that everything you do with excellence, which is easy to talk about and really hard to do. And I don't do excellence each and every day. But what's the old saying? I love going the extra mile because there's just not much traffic there. And so every day I'm trying to challenge my.
I've never
every day
heard
I'm
that
trying to
before.
challenge my. Oh man, it's a great. It's got it on a plaque on my wall. So every day I'm trying to challenge myself. What can I do that's differently, that's going to leave an impression on either my customers or my prospects, to get them to say, "Wow, this is. I love working with this guy." And that's but that's no secret. I think that's what all of us do to some level.
That's amazing. Yeah, and you said the hard work. You said get through the ups and the lows, commit to a process.
Yep.
What was that?
Got to have a little bit of luck.
Little bit of luck, totally true.
And then you got to deliver it. And then you got to deliver with excellence.
Deliver with excellence. Wow. And okay, so then out of the hundreds or thousands of companies that you've consulted, your own experience, if you could tell yourself one thing, if you could go back to when you first started in sales, and this comes down to the sales secret, the chapter that the book is going to be written on. If you had a son, daughter, whoever, they wanted to become the world's best salespeople, what would be the one piece of advice, one secret that you would tell them or give them?
You need, in my opinion, to master the ability to ask great questions.
Master the ability to ask great questions.
There's a lot of elements. You've got to have a compelling story. You have to have the guts to go out and approach people you don't know. You got to be able to close deals, build relationships, deliver the right kinds of presentations. But if you said, "Hey Tim, I'm going to give you $100 to invest in yourself, and you can only invest in one area. What one area would I invest?" And it's the ability to ask great questions. There's research out there, Brandon, that says that 86% of today's B2B buyers say the questions salespeople are asking them are mind-numbing. They're the same stupid questions every other person in that industry is asking, and most of the questions that we ask are manipulative and self-serving. What's your budget? That's manipulative and self-serving. When are you going to make a decision? Manipulative and self-serving. Who's making the decision? Manipulative and self-serving. And so it's a real passion of mine that once you finally get that conversation, you get that meeting, shut the hell up and ask great questions. Figure out where they're at, where they're trying to get to, what's in their way, what success looks like for them, and then wrap your solution in their ideas, and voila.
Yeah, that's funny because I'm so sold on that. When I learned how to finally ask great questions in sales, my life changed. Because if you ask the great questions, you customize. You know everything now because you asked, you didn't assume. And then B, you could customize your presentation, your pitch to deliver on the responses, the answers, like what they're looking for and what they need from those questions. Like, I completely agree. That's an amazing sales secret. And where would, because our audience, people that are new to sales, people that are in sales that are average, that want to become good, people that are good and want to join the top 1%. And then you've got people that are great. They're part of the top 1% and they want to get to 7 figures earners, right? The $1 million earners in sales and more. How would one start developing or start, getting better at asking great questions?
That's a really good question. Number one, hang out with people that ask great questions. I mean, the best way to learn is to watch or to listen. So if you're around somebody in your organization that has this skill, has this gift, has developed this craft, you need to hang with them. And that's one thing as salespeople we don't do. We don't hang enough with top performers so that some of that rubs off on us. And the second thing and there's probably more than two. So yeah, there are. Go out to YouTube and search for great sales questions. Do a Google search on it. Books. Tom Fries's Question-Based Selling, QBS, great book. Spin Sell. I mean, there's, I don't know. I'm looking over my bookshelf. I must have a dozen books on asking great sales questions, and it's not like, and this won't surprise you, but I want to make sure everybody watching this. It's not like you're going to read this book and become an expert. You're going to read this book, though, and it's going to stimulate thinking and ideas, because you can't do it my way and you can't do it the way Tom Fries does. You've got to do it your way. But if you get enough good ingredients in your head, all of a sudden a better product will start popping out. So it's not read this book and check the box. It's learn and apply what you're learning to what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that was one of the ways that I was able to learn how to do great. Like this book is all around, reading hundreds of sales books, and that contributed to a lot to my success and everyone's success in sales. I know your success, like you just said, you've got hundreds of sales books over there. You've read them all. I've read them all. And this book hopefully dwindles all the Cliff Notes version of Tim, of Jill, of Aaron, of everyone, which is great. But, I studied interviewers like criminal investigators. I studied like people that Joe Rogan. I'd studied Chris Harrison from The Bachelor. I would study like crazy people that were like expert interviewers. That was one of the ways that I read all the books, but then like the questions kind of get somewhat boring. And, like, what's your problem? What are your goals? What are your KPIs? It's like, dude, those are like those are table stakes. And to be honest, you should know a lot of that from online research. I try to come up with like different ways. Investigative reporting was like, if you start studying investigative reporters, they're really good at asking questions that dig deep.
And I'm smiling here because I love what you're saying. Dude, you're just so spot on. If you look at people that are excellent interviewers, that interview celebrities, VIPs, they don't just lob question after question after question. And one of the things I teach that you picked up on because you've demonstrated it today, is his ability to add context to a question, because it gives your listener, it gives them the reason behind why you're asking the question, and it positions you as being a subject matter expert. So an example, I can go to a sales executive and say, hey, what are you doing to make sure that your sales team does a good job of implementing proper follow-up? All right, that's not a bad question. But if I go to a sales executive and I said, hey, a recent report published by Harvard Business Review says 80% of new business opportunities today require at least 5 failed attempts to connect. Yet 83% of salespeople report giving up after just 3 failed tries. Given this information, what initiatives or plans do you have in place to help your team capitalize on this opportunity? That's a completely different question, because now the executive is like, whoa, slow down, Sparky. What are you talking about? 5 failed attempts? Most people give up. Tell me more about that. And I'm invited into the conversation versus feeling like I'm, interrogating you. So it's
wow, that's a really great way to do it. You're using intelligence and data and research to then ask the questions, and you kind of tie both of it in.
Yeah. Even when you're going through, qualification with a customer, you can start asking qualifying questions. And again, it feels manipulative. But if you say, hey, so Brandon, I'm really excited to be doing this sales training workshop for your organization. But you know what, Brandon, what we have found is a lot of our existing customers have discovered after the workshop that if we don't have coaching and follow-up in place, a lot of the ideas we teach are just going to fall fallow. What have you considered, Brandon, for implementing any kind of follow-up with your workshop? So basically what I'm trying to do is upsell you to a follow-up program. But if I just said, hey, would you like to buy follow-up? You're probably like, I'm not interested. But if you position it with some context, hey, other customers are finding that this follow-up is a key piece, you soften the blow and you get people, what's the old saying? If you can get your ideas to be their ideas, you're going to be okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a sniper or something. Like you're planting the seeds. That's awesome.
That's right.
You get their ideas, your ideas, their ideas. It's a great way to do it. Wow.
Well, I tell the story, all of us have been teenagers, and I raised 2 teenagers. As a teenager, can anybody tell you what to do? The answer, no. So the only way I could get like my teenage son to do something is you'd have to just say, wow, this idea you've got to go do this, this, and this, which sounds incredibly dangerous, but you'd say, oh man, sounds like you guys are really going to have a good time out there driving around in a truck shooting stuff up. Let me ask you a question. What, if anything, could possibly go wrong? And, all of a sudden you'd be like, well, somebody could get shot. Okay, good. Let's tease this out. What else could happen? So if you can make your ideas their ideas, like I said, the world will be at a path to your door.
That's amazing. So you have to ask great questions and become an expert at asking great questions. And then as you get that data, how do you leverage that information? So you're probing with me, asking great questions. I'm the CEO of seamless.ai, the world's best sales leads. And then how do you leverage that data to drive a deal or sales forward?
Well, you hinted at it earlier. So I do a lot of presentation coaching. And
by the way, Tim's presentations are amazing. I sold for IBM and Google and bought a bunch of his courses. I mean, I applied a lot of it to win a lot of money. So I highly recommend to go through his presentation, and I purchased them because I was selling to B2B enterprise Fortune 500. And this was a guy that worked at the tech B2B enterprise Fortune 500. So I just watched these presentations, and then HP was one of my top clients that I won. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to study this guy that worked there and learn his presentation skills that could relate to winning HP. So go ahead. I mean, a thing or two here.
So you hinted at it earlier that if you do the right due diligence, and so we look at the presentation stuff I do. When I teach presentations to sales forces, easily a third of creating a great presentation is homework. Because you hinted at it earlier, Brandon. If you do the homework, if you've asked the right questions, you show up, and whether you're delivering a presentation or you're delivering a proposal, you need to leverage what you've learned. And when you leverage what you learn, you're going to present your solution or you're going to deliver your proposal. The customer's going to look at it. The first words out of their mouth are going to be, you know what, that's exactly what we need. And you'll be like, yeah, because you told me that's what you needed, because I had the patience to ask the right questions. So you're not changing what you offer. You're just wrapping it in their language. And so many salespeople fail to do that. A couple years ago, I was looking for a new, I wanted somebody to redo the website, right? And everybody was more than happy to put together a proposal or a presentation on how they could redo my website.
Yep.
The dude I went with, Brandon, said, well, why do you want to redo your website? Oh, well, that's a good question. It has nothing to do with logos and fonts and colors. It has everything to do with, I want to get more leads. Oh, well, get more leads. Have you thought, what are you doing with SEO? Oh, that's a good question. What are you doing with pay-per-click? Well, that's a good question. What are you doing with cross-referencing links to other websites? Well, that's a good. So I not only hired this guy to redo the website, but I hired him to do all that other stuff because nobody else was asking me that. So he got to the root cause. It wasn't that I wanted a new website. I wanted more leads. And
that's awesome.
We just see salespeople stumble on that all the time.
Did you end up doing the website redesign or no?
Yeah, I did. And again, I think everybody else just thought I wanted prettier fonts and different colors. They weren't really getting to the heart of it. And this guy, it's almost that contrarian sale where it's like, really? Doing a new website, it's expensive. It's going to take time. It's hassles. You're going to have to make decisions. Why wouldn't you just leave things the way they are? And I was like, well, that's a really good question. The reason I want to leave things the way they are is we're not getting enough leads through the website. Oh, so it's really not about a new website. You really want to get more leads. Uh-huh. And so it was a completely different conversation.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I used to sell that stuff at IBM Interactive and Google, selling, paid search marketing, selling website redesigns for multi-million-dollar website redesign deals and social media marketing and mobile. So, totally get that approach. And one of the ways that I won a lot of deals was just by doing a ton of research and strategy. So if you reach out to me wanting a website, I'd research you, I'd research the competitors, what you were doing, what they were doing, how to help you maximize revenue. Because I just assumed you want to make more money. And then I would tie that research and strategy. So when I came to the first meeting, I'd do the discovery and I'd apply the research and the strategy that I did on my own to then tie it all together and win the business, which was success. And that's awesome. So the sales secret to sales success from Tim Wackel: learn to ask great questions. right?
That's it. If you showed up on my doorstep and the only skill you had was asking great questions, I would pick you on my team.
And then, but they would also need all those other jazz, right? The hard work.
You bet, dude. But if you're looking for the secret, number one,
secret. Ask great
the tip of the spear is asking great questions. Now we got to have a shaft and the arrows and all that other stuff.
Right.
But the tip is you gotta be able to ask great questions.
And you said the best way to do that, you got to get the books. So get a bunch of books.
Yep.
Probably like role play some of these questions. Try to be creative. Just like you can come up with other questions that aren't in the books as well, right?
Yeah.
What are some other ways to develop the questions just to wrap this up?
I think really great salespeople, Brandon, you need to have a library of them. In other words, here's the deal. I have yet to meet a salesperson that can go into a call and just create these really good, high impact, thought provoking questions. And if you have to sit down before each and every sales call and start with a blank document, you're only going to make 3 calls a day. So I'm a real big proponent on get a library, start with 3, make it into 9, that turns to 20, and you keep adding questions. And then you start figuring out what are my winners and what are my losers. And then call preparation, you look at where you're at today, you look at where you want to be at the end of the call, and you say, hey man, here are the 2 or 3 questions that really, really need to be asked today. And this is how I can ask them. And if you do that, I mean, when I interview top performers today, Brandon, that's one of, the first question I'll ask you is I'll say, hey, give me your pitch. What's your stadium pitch? What if I gave you a microphone and put you in front of 100 prospects and I asked you, what is it that you guys do? How would you answer that question in such a way that people want to come up and meet you? That's my first interview question. My second interview question is, hey, the quality of your business is directly impacted by the quality of your questions. What are the 3 best sales questions you're asking prospects today? And if you stumble on that, if you're like, what's your budget? What keeps you up at night? Who's making the decision? We're done,
Yeah, I hit a lot of those.
Yeah, you can tell I'm a little bit passionate about it because I see a lot of it.
Yeah, I get asked. I even get like LinkedIn emails, calls, all asking the same things. Like, what are your goals? It's like, come on, man. Research what we do and get like, what do you think my goals are?
My goal is to get out of this conversation as quickly as I can, but thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Tim, we are just thrilled, humbled, honored, and grateful to have you on Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Tim Wackel, founder of Wackel and president of the Wackel Group, one of the largest, best training and consulting firms dedicated to helping organizations find, win, and keep enterprise customers for life. The #1 sales rep out of 10,000 from HP now has clients spanning Allstate, Cisco, HP, Wells Fargo, Philips, Raytheon, and hundreds of others, man. Thank you so much for the time today. I'm really excited to share your sales secret to the entire audience. And thank you so much. And before we go, where can people follow you, connect with you, and learn from you?
Website is great, timwackel.com. There's only one out there, TIMWACKEL. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Hit me up on Twitter. Or just give me a call. I'm still old-fashioned. If the phone rings, I still pick the damn thing up. So if you want to talk, give me a call, 214-369-7722.
And what was that again?
214-369-7722.
Boom. There you had it, guys. Thank you so much to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Pre-order a copy of the book today at secretsalesbook.com. That's secretsalesbook.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. We release new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube to never miss an episode.